This old Hornby kit looks a bit battered. Let's see what I can do to improve it. While building junctions and baseboards and laying track on curves, it's not quite my forte in railway modelling. Certainly needs a bit of work. One particular aspect I do enjoy, and I haven't done too bad at, is kit building and scratch building. So I love making buildings, really enjoy making buildings. It's one of my favourite parts of the hobby, along with weathering. And that's what I'm here to talk to you today about. Today I have this kit. This is the Hornby R599 Country Church. This comes from the days, I think it was back in the 90s, possibly 80s, good chance 80s, or for the Scaledale range, when Hornby used to have their town and country range. Example here. And this kit was acquired through various sources, but basically my dad had a box of buildings, asked me if I wanted anything in it, and this was particularly the one that sort of struck my interest. Now the reason for that was, a few years ago, I think it was on the New Railway Modellers Forum, I was having a look around there, and there was a chap from Australia, just had a lovely layout right around his garage, had a sofa in the middle, which I think is a great idea. Wouldn't mind that myself, but I think I've got about 5 feet here, if that. No, that's too wide. No, it can't even be 5. Ain't no sofa fitting in here anyway. But what he'd done with this kit is he'd chopped it up a bit around the edges, and he buried it into the scenery as a castle ruins. I really like that idea, and that's why this kit struck out. And I thought, yeah, that's great. Now I could do the same. Since then, I've sort of changed my mind, mostly because where I want to model doesn't really have any castle ruins, and secondly, I quite like the church. It's quite good. And also, have a look online. This thing goes for about 24 quid. Anyway, there we are. But as you can see, it needs a bit of work. It's a bit worn out. It's a bit battered. The gutter's missing from here. I think some of the windows are starting to hang out, and it needs a lick of paint. And then it's also got this awful, you know how it was back in the 90s, because I assume this was when the layout was built. You get your building, plonk it on the baseboard, you get your plaster of Paris, splodge it all round, and then you'd be off to do it all. Pick up your pot of bright green paint, and there's your grass. Bit of scatter on top. Bob's your uncle. Obviously, we take a bit more care in layout building these days. So I would like to show you how I'm going to transform this. And if it doesn't work, well, you'll never know. So before I start painting, let's take a closer look at what needs doing. Well, firstly, this definitely needs scraping off. More itself is not a bad condition. I think some of these gaps need a bit of filling. Say the guttering around here is going to need replacing. The windows aren't too bad. I spotted one around here. It's got a bit of paint on it. It's a bit wonky. That probably needs to come out, be realigned and cleaned up. We've got a couple of clocks, but for some reason there's no clock here. Or is there? Actually, having a little look closer, that looks like someone's got a bit handy with a paintbrush. There we are. And also, it's a bit dusty at the top, so a bit of a clean up. Clean this scatter off, clean this plaster of Paris and bright green emulsion, and then we'll start doing some repairs. So I've cleaned around the church now. Fortunately, some vandals smashed this window when I wasn't looking. Yeah, it didn't come out very well. And now I've managed to recover the clock. It was just hiding under a dab of paint. The next problem is this roof. It seems to have lots of scatter painted into it. So that's going to have to come off before I do any forward painting. I think it's up here too. I'm not quite sure how it's been painted here. I've got a feeling that the brush went in the paint pot, then went in the scat, and then went on the roof. Anyway, got it on the brickwork as well. So I'm going to try and clean this off. See how we get on. So that's the scatter all scraped away. We've got the tiles back, and it was too difficult of a job. It's still a little bit messy, but it shouldn't be too bad now. Same on this side. The next job will be, I'm going to just patch up the church. I'm going to fill up this gap, glue any joints that are a bit loose, cut a bit of plastic card that's going to go in there for the guttering, and then hopefully it should be ready for a paint. I've gone round, I've filled up the gaps, glued any loose joints. I've popped a bit of primer onto this bit of plastic card I've popped in for the guttering. And it's just got a little sandpaper, just rubbed any more sort of rough edges down. It's revealed, I think that needs a little bit more work before I move on. But otherwise, the next task is just to go over this with a bit of primer before painting. So here we are, day 2. The primer's been left to dry overnight. Church, now nicely primed. Now when I've come back to it, I have looked over and I've seen a few unsightly gaps which have been revealed by the primer, particularly around the roof area here, under the ridge tiles, and again on this side. So I've gone back over them with this, which is Squadron Products Grey Putty. I really like this stuff. I'll just show you what's inside. It's quite a soft putty, and I tend to use acquired coffee sticks or toothpick. And just sort of just scrape a little bit out of the tube. You don't need too much, and you can just gently manipulate the putty into your gap, and then it dries very quickly, very quickly. You can see it's had a hole in it at one point where it's leaked, and it's just sealed itself up. I think it's been like that for like nearly 2 years now, so it's really good stuff for that. And it's very easy to sand down afterwards, so you just get a nice little bit of light sanding paper, not too hard on the grit. I mean, I've used other fillers in the past as Humbrels, but I find that's a bit thick and a bit difficult to manipulate. It's not too bad, you've got a large area. And again, there's Student Materials Perfect Plastic Putty. It's not bad. I'd choose it over the Humbrel, but as I say, this one I'd recommend if you are kit building and you want to fill in those unsightly gaps. That's the one I'd go for. So the church, it's going to need painting. Keep talking about it. Now, before I dive in and just get the paints out, I've had a look at churches in my chosen area that I want to model. So as it stands, I'm still intending to model this round South Oxfordshire. So I've looked up churches. Now, sort of advice to anyone really, when you are looking at buildings in the area, you need to sometimes be quite specific in where you're going to look, because if you just Google Oxford churches, as I did, you're going to get the lovely Cotswold stone churches turn up in your Google search, and then you're going to get the ones in South Oxfordshire which are more of the grey stone with the red roof tiles. So you need to be sort of certain of where you're going to model your church, because when these were built, it was obviously long before railways, and people weren't very keen on transporting stone here, there and everywhere. So, you know, churches were built with local materials. So looking around, I looked at sort of churches in Berkshire as well, the church at Cholsey, St Mary's, and they all have very similar sort of design in that they are grey stone with red roof, as this was originally painted, but I intend to do a slightly better job. So for the roof, I'm going to use the Life Colours Leather Reddish tone. I quite like the leather tones. I think they're quite good. So it's sort of a reddy brown sort of colour. So I'm going to use that for the tiles, and then I've got the various Life Colour stone set. So we're going to go in there, probably just mix the colours together to get a better blend. So I'll probably use a bit of light stone, brown stone, and a bit of green stone, probably blue stone. Probably 4 of them mixed in will get the sort of right consistency of what I want. So I've painted the roof with the reddish leather, but it's starting to dry, and it's looking more orange than red to me. So I'm going to use this instead, which is the MIG Dark Rust. Test it in a bit of paper. It looks a bit more sort of liking to the colour I want. So I'm just going to let this orange dry off, and then I'll go over the top of that and see how that turns out. So that's with the MIG Dark Rust. I think that's a much improved colour for the church roof. It's a bit darker, more reddish, a little bit bold at the moment, but a bit of weathering over the top of that should tone it down. So next I'm going to move on to the stone walls. I'm going to concentrate by using the blue stone, Life Colours blue stone, green stone, and then a bit of light stone just for blending, and then maybe a bit of brown stone probably on these corners around here. We'll see how we get on. So here we are, the church is painted up with the grey stone mix on it. So I did use the, in the end I've used the light stone, green stone, blue stone and brown stone, and I've just blended the colours together. That's what I like about the Life Colour series. They blend very well because they're quite thin. So rather than getting a uniform colour all over, I've sort of got a blended colour. Cutting around the windows, there's still a few paint marks where the brush has slipped in places. It wasn't the easiest to do. But next job is I'm going to dry brush and just highlight the stonework a bit more, and then pick out sort of these corner bricks as well, just to highlight the details. So now, just highlighted the cornerstones just on the edge of the church. I'm now going to concentrate on the roof and sort of tone it down a bit, and probably start picking out some of the details as well. I picked the majority of the detail out, just a bit of black, like up here on the werves, that's where the bells would be, and the guttering and drain pipes. Starting to weather the stonework a little further. I'm using the Life Colours Sleeper Grime, rail weathering, frame dirt and roof dirt. It's from the rail weathering pack. I'm just lightly putting on small amounts around the windows, corners and sort of the parapets at the top. And also I've been doing it on the louvres and the bell tower, just to sort of get rid of these quite starkness of some of the paint and just to tone it down a bit. So for the church, I'm finishing touches. I've painted the doors, you can see. For the doors, I've used Life Colours. It was like the wood colouring pack. So we start off with the base colour, and then I let it go off a bit, and then add warm sunlight shade 1 and 2, and then a bit of the dark wood on top. And I just blend them in together, and you get this really nice effect. And they're some of my favourite paints, to be honest. I really like using them for getting wood effects. I think they come out really well. And then the door furniture has just been picked out in Humbrol's number 56 gunmetal. Get your fingers out of the way. I've weathered the roof. Just blended that in a bit more, and then as I showed you, I've blended in the stonework. And that is the finished article.